if anyone has any questions, comments, anything they'd like to share, just feel free. If not, we'll just sit here for a little while.
I'd like to say thank you to all of you.
You're welcome.
Very it was moving to watch each of you to hear your story. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm interested now. You say you work in prisons in Cambridge now?
No. I run a small human rights not-for-profit called the Center for Prisoner Health and Human Rights. But I started work, was introduced to the field when I was in divinity school by a professor who asked me why I was looking for human rights problems outside the country, when in fact we have one of the world's largest human rights problems in our prisons and jails. In large measure because, for those of you who don't, in large measure because we have criminalized mental illness and substance disorders, quite literally. The way that the challenge, we have 5% of the world's population in the country and 25% of the world's prisoners. So think about that. We're doing something very differently than every other country in the world is. And what we're doing is, over 50% of the populations that are incarcerated are mentally ill. 60 to 90%, particularly in jails, are substance involved. A third of the whole population are addicts. And it's a function of, the people who are incarcerated are marked by, first, poverty. By and large, the individuals who are there are poor, which means that because we do not believe in health care for the poor in this country, in other words, Medicaid covers, as it stands now, covers the poor, low-income individuals only if they're pregnant, have children, or are already disabled. If you are simply poor and mentally ill, if you're simply poor and have diabetes, if you're simply poor and whatever the issue is, that alone is not sufficient to get you health care in the country. That's why with the healthcare, the ACA healthcare reform, and the expansion of the Medicaid population to include people just categorically by income level, will be bringing in a large number of these individuals who don't have an opportunity to get health care in the community for their mental illness, so that the majority, recidivism rates in Rhode Island are over 50%. So within 3 years, individuals who are released are back in. The majority of those individuals are mentally ill, they're substance involved, and we actually have services in the community here. Rhode Island is, several of the blue states actually do provide some levels of care for the poor, but the bulk of the country doesn't, and even here we still have those high rates. So I don't mean to go on a diatribe, except that's my job. And to really understand this, people just don't understand it. If we are, so the first marker is poverty. The second marker is really poor health, which is a function of poverty because you cannot get health coverage simply by virtue of being poor. And the third is race. If you're black, the ratios of, the numbers are unbelievable, and no matter, and we're based at the Miriam Hospital and Brown's Medical School. All of the things I'm talking about are backed by these major research studies. We do correctional health research. So, we know what the right thing is to do. We just, don't do it. There's a strong possibility of change against January 1, healthcare reform, Medicaid expansion, where there will be, for the first time, healthcare opportunities for the population.
Why don't people talk about that? I feel like everyone's so negative about the healthcare thing. Why don't more people talk about that stuff? You just
because it's Frankly, I don't know.
Because billionaires own the media.
But even liberal people, like I watch the liberal news stations, like they're not talking about this stuff. Like, duh, like we're trying to work towards this, like this thing where like you have to be pregnant or whatever to have a kid to get Medicare. Like it's so messed up. Like you're saying, like just a normal poor person can't get Medicare. Like,
but no, it's just
why
because
are people
first of all,
talking
it's
about
not
this
on most of our radar screens. Most of, it is such a class-based function that there, and it even holds. I mean, ironically, even if you're a black middle class individual, your chances of being incarcerated are no worse than if you're a white middle class individual. But when you look at lower income individuals, it's astronomical. I mean, we have, for instance, in the country, we incarcerated at a rate of about 750 per 100,000. When you look at black male populations, you're talking about well over 3,000 per 100,000, and in some communities, you're down to you're about 1 in 3 individuals, black individuals, particularly if you're a high school dropout, who are more likely to end up in jail than any other place. So the forces that go to make this are both on the legal side as well as on the health side, and we just. That's why, to me, the huge irony of these debates that we're having about Medicaid expansion is how can anyone argue that the poor shouldn't get care? That's what they're essentially saying to the states, the 24 states in the country that are not expanding Medicaid. It means that the very poorest of the poor, people with incomes of under 138% of the poverty line, will not receive health care, period. So no, we need to be having a huge national discussion. It's part of what our role is at the center, is to get this out. So,
what part,
sorry about that.
That's in regards to healthcare, what part do you think there's any part now within the healthcare system in regards to this, with incarceration or even just in general population, that it's become a complete business aspect and there's loss of the humanistic aspect of healthcare?
Well, I mean, when I talk about the healthcare reform, I tend to avoid the mandate and the fact that we have chosen to structure healthcare reform through the use of insurance companies, which adds by definition a layer of money and expenditure that most other countries don't have. In other words, so it's all about business, if that's your question.
My question was, do you think at any point that it was always just a business with health insurance, or was there ever a humanistic aspect, like throughout the decades, or?
What was that? Can you? I have here.
My question is, like, throughout the decades, do you think health insurance, within the health insurance and incarceration, that it's always been a business, or that it's always, or that it's there?
Was there any point in the history where it was more idealistic?
No. We have never insured the poor, qua poor. The poor, just if you're poor, we have never had health insurance for that population, and for the poor.
We used to have mental health hospitals. We don't have those anymore.
Correct.
So
and that was there was the movement. It began actually with John Kennedy in 1963, a movement to humanize the extraordinarily horrific institutionalization of the mentally ill, and so we began quite specifically as a matter of policy closing these big psychiatric facilities with the understanding that there would be a corresponding increase of care in the community as a more humane way of community mental health homes. But because of NIMBY, not in my backyard, because of there was never the political will to take care of the other end of it.
Right.
So that individuals who had been institutionalized, we have less than a tenth of the beds that we did then. The largest psychiatric facilities in the country are the New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles jails. In every state, the largest psychiatric facility in the state is the largest jail in the state, bar none. These are not built except for the large. I mean, actually, Chicago, New York, and Chicago does an excellent job. Los Angeles does a pretty good job. New York depends on where you are. this is not an efficient way to run a healthcare system by incarcerating people at over $50,000 a year on average. The other thing is that if you're mentally ill in prison and jail, you cycle up through the system, so that by the time we get to the maximum security levels, over 50% are seriously mentally ill because they act out. They can't, these facilities are not able to deal with with the population of seriously mentally ill, and so it's not fun or pleasant. And part of what I was, this journey for me has been to find people, some of you here, who are exceptional mirrors, who are also working against these stacked odds, whether it's working with the kids of incarcerated parents or communities in poverty. It's just, anyway, blah, 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 blah. Yep.
I have a question for Sophia, which is probably impossible to answer, but what do you attribute your resilience to earlier, before you discovered dance and you were a kid, or even coming here with these horrific circumstances? And I'm not if you just say, I don't know, that's, I would understand that.
I mean, really, my life has changed so much that to look back to what I went through, it's just kind of like, I'm glad certain things happened. I used to be that kind of person to say, hey, you know what, I regret this, or I would always come with a negative attitude or consider myself a realist and being real and didn't have any kind of optimism. I don't regret any of it because it brought me here today, and I learned a lot of things today. So I go through certain things and obstacles in life, and there's a big saying that everyone says that they believe in, that things happen for a reason. I'm still trying to believe that. So it's kind of like I have more of an optimistic view on life now, and where I'm going and what I'm doing and what my creation is. So to say if this didn't happen and I wouldn't be here, I don't know how to answer that, because I'm here now and I'm happy with where I'm at, and I could be happier with where I'm going, because it's just, for me, honestly, I think life is just starting over for me. Coming back from Cambodia and everything there, I've only been there for 2 weeks, but those 2 weeks felt like a dream, because it was so quick, it was so intense, emotionally and physically, and the volunteering and seeing the kids with nothing, with the biggest smiles in the world, and seeing amputees, and that went through that. These are myths that I was hearing from my family, from my father, my mother, from the older generation. You would always hear these stories. I mean, even from neighborhoods, of stories of suffering and poverty and stuff that you always hear. But to actually go there and see it in real life in 2013 and see that it's still going on and they're still smiling, makes me look back at my life like, what the hell am I complaining about? You know what I mean? What is so bad in my life right now that I can complain every single day and say, you know what, this and that and yada, yada, yada. I mean, Aaron knows, the company knows, I complain about money a lot. A lot. And being an artist, I am in that poverty level, because I make below the poverty line for a 4-family, I may be wrong, it was $17,000. It might be whatever it is now. I make below that. And before I would complain about, I can't do this, I can't do that, and yada, 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 I want this kind of life, I want this kind of life. As of right now, I'm not taking life as it is. I am taking life and enjoying it, because with whatever I have now, I can make something of it. And which is what I wanted to share with everybody, because now with Aaron's help and Everett's help, I've been working in the DYS system, the Department of Youth Services, and kids who've been to prison and stuff like that, and helping with them, because they're in that same mind state that I was at. Luckily, I didn't end up where they were at, or where they're at now, so now I get a chance to go there and share these personal stories, and I'm learning from them, because they're also sharing these personal stories with me as well. And for these hardcore kids to come up and say, hey, you know what, we got every single kid to write in the prison. Nobody likes to write in prison. In that place anyway. We got every single kid to write. We got every single kid to do a dance step. We got every single kid to play an improv game. We got every single kid to play a girl. That is really hard, to play a girl, and they enjoyed it. That is what makes me smile. That is what makes them smile. So this is kind of hope for them, and hope for me, and hope for all of us, really, to take that, you know what I mean? And be thankful that you're still here, your heart's still beating, you're still breathing air. There was a story when I was in Cambodia. I met a guy named Michael who lives in Vietnam but does work in Cambodia, so he travels back and forth. And he met this guy on the river front. He had no legs. He was an amputee because of the landmines from Cambodia and Thailand. He had no legs, and he didn't ask for $1, and he crawled all the way to Michael with the biggest smile on his face just to have a conversation. And that was it. And so Michael came to me, and he's from Ireland. He came to me and he says, "What the hell am I complaining about?" You know, so it's like I'm hearing his stories and hearing all these other kids' stories. And so when I came back from Cambodia, I vowed to be more optimistic, to be more positive, to try my best to, because I have a daughter, she's 10 years old. You don't want to have a father that's always shitty and always being real the whole time. You know, they have hopes and dreams too. You don't want to destroy that. And that's what I learned in Cambodia with the kids. And I'm still learning family structure, and I like it. I like learning the family structure even at the age of 33, even though I didn't have it. Because now I'm kind of creating a new me and learning new things about myself, and I'm sure you did as well. So I would never change what happened. It already happened. You know what I mean? So, and I don't regret any of it. Certain things I would do differently, but I don't regret any of it, and it's brought me here today with everyone here. So there's a story of pain, struggle, progress, success. And I think it's just going to keep going and continue in that route. So I don't know if I answered your question the way you wanted it.
Totally.
That's how you do.
I have a question for David.
Yes.
So has there ever been a client that made you realize how much you loved your job? Like, has there one person that you changed truly?
I've never been I've never been asked that question before. No, it's been they call it a gestalt. It's been a hole because I've worked in a lot of different areas. I developed an expertise after I saw that person for Cambodia. I wanted to work in trauma, so I studied post-traumatic stress, different types of trauma. I work with torture victims here and abroad, military, domestic violence. I owned an agency for domestic violence. I probably worked with 800 to 1,000 offenders and also victims. So I wanted to work with folks. I work in some very multi-layered and complex areas. And to answer your question, when someone comes to me and they have made it through all this kind of stuff, I have great admiration for them. And sometimes they're like, oh, my life sucks. My life is terrible. I'm not a good person, or I'm a bad person. But when I see them, I look at them as saying, you made it, and you made it to be able to come into my little office and maybe work on this. Because I like to think I'm kind of funny, but I'm not fun to work with if you don't want to work on this stuff. So when someone comes to me, I'm like, oh, we're good, because we're going to find a way to be able to get to where you want to go, as long as it's a good place. If you want to work hard to be a bad person, I'm not your guy. But that constant reinforcement of that experience, it's a whole. So.
Thank you.
I have a question for Brett. Hi. You were speaking to us a lot about the gnarly person inside of you and how that part of you was responding to these experiences you were living through. And I was wondering how we never really found out what happened to that part of you in divinity school, but more than that, working with the prisoners now and advocating for them. I'm wondering how that has affected that gnarlier boy.
Well, what I realized when I was finished with that it's all been a healing journey in reality, and that the kid has informed a lot of the identification with the outsider. I mean, never made sense to me, or anybody looking for why a white man of power and privilege would be so identified with the outsider, and that's a function and a gift of that child, as is, you know, so much of who I am is a result of the gifts of that child, and it's just, you know, the journey is about integrating and having them and really coming together. I mean, the split was really there, and it's just, that's, I think, what many of our lives' journeys are, just how to bring those different pieces of ourselves. Those are 2 parts. I have other parts too. So I don't know if that quite answers the story, but it's been, you know, the child is a huge gift. That broken part. The broken part is how we, you know, for me anyway, how the, you know, as Leonard Cohen says, it's, you know, it's the broken. It's only through a broken heart that you can actually let the light in, and so that's, yeah. No, I see it as a huge gift, and a huge, and to be able to hold it as a gift, you know. So yeah, and that the movement and the dance through that, you know. So, thanks.
That person had a question right there.
I wanted to ask David about a specific place you worked. Have you ever worked at a place called Meeting Street? And if so, was it hard to work there?
And my daughters have volunteered there many times. I don't work there. Also, my father-in-law, Al Colella, does a lot of volunteer work there as well. Are you asking, was it hard for me personally? Yeah. No. Again, the same kind of thing about resilience and seeing those folks be wherever they're at, and I don't find it difficult. Same kind of thing. I really admire the folks that are there, and the clients, or the folks there, and the people that work there for the most part as well.
I know what you mean by resilience. I had to go there at least 10 times.
What's that again?
I know what you mean by resilience. I had to go there at least 5 times.
Yeah.
With a whole bunch of different therapists, all thanks to my dear old dad.
Aha!
And he's still subject to therapists.
Well, part of this is
that.
that
I'll send you today.
that could be pleasurable or oh no!
And you'll learn resilience.
I've had many people say, my child won't talk to you. They're just going to sit there and they won't say a word. It hasn't happened yet. Knock on rubber, but it's. But I don't see myself when people come in. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting with someone 5 years old or 75. I see us as equals, and there's not Dr. Phil telling the people what to do and yelling at them and waving a finger. We're equals. We're going to try to figure out some stuff together. There would be no reason to come to see me if I didn't have these particular areas of expertise. But I'm very upfront with people. If they come up and they say, hey, this is what's going on, and that's not my area of expertise, I say, that's not my area of expertise. Let's find somebody that can bring something to the table for you. So,
How about one more question for
This is kind of a huge question, and it's addressed to all of you, and perhaps everyone here. So, you've all identified that you've discovered and cultivated a life of service along the way. That's kind of where you all ended up, and that seems to be a common theme here. With the goal of creating this ripple effect, this domino effect, such that social transformation can happen on a larger scale, right? Okay, so what have you identified, if anything, as helpful when working with people who've had a life of oppression and injustice and trauma, to help them in their own transformation so that they then can become agents for positive change?
So how do you help others?
Good
How do you help others?
How do you keep it going?
yeah.
How do you knock that next domino over?
Can I? Yes, go ahead. Just very quickly, I think if you're going to play it forward, that for me, when I came here, I knew that there would be folks here that would not be able to afford to do the kind of thing that I do with folks and collaborate with, and so I offer to do it for free. And I think part of it is that it's one thing to talk about it, you got to do something about it. And so I was willing to put myself, and I'm not saying, oh, I'm such a wonderful guy, but I was willing to put myself forward. And I've always had people that I've seen, I don't even call them clients, I just say we see each other. I've always had people that have not been able to afford to pay for whatever reasons, and I've always had folks that I've seen under that. I can't do everyone like that because I couldn't survive. The other thing is I require people to play it forward. If they don't have any money and we see each other under that premise, then they have to do something for other people for us to do it. And as long as they're willing to do that, and I have some way of monitoring that, then I feel like I've been paid well, I've been paid very well for it. So that's how I approach it.
If I get your question, I mean, for me, just a couple of quick comments. One, service is a calling. I can't imagine not doing this. And I've tried to imagine something else. And I can't. So it's something that's, and I think part of that is the rootedness of that child in me who's so identified with that, it's this yearning for, to help the child actually heal. And so the whole notion, the work, the gift for me of the bulk of being in Mexico with liberation theology and all of these liberation theologians was, it's all about empowerment. It's really about, it's not about me doing for them. It's about what makes it so that the situations will be different, so that we're not. How do we transform the systems that are sustaining this? And for me, the only way that I can sustain this work, because working with the most vilified populations who are, for 6 years I worked one-on-one with prisoners in Prisoners Legal Services of Massachusetts as a civil rights attorney, and that was ultimately became really debilitating, just because of it was like working in hospice for the woman who's dying and not having any support. Mm-hmm. And what is here, and is again seeing dear, wonderful peers and friends who we work on this as a calling. I mean, literally as a calling, and together work as this incredible team, mirroring to each other the strengths and laughing and having fun in something that could be simply, and is devastating when you begin to look at some of it. So it's really, for me, it can't be done without a team. So.
With David, therapist, there's always talk therapy. With Brad, creating a team and getting to know the community, there is an underlying theme that goes with transformation and change, and I'm an advocate for this. I believe that it is personal stories. Now, when you listen to someone for the first time, no matter where they're at, you're listening to someone for the first time, you're hearing their story for the first time, what are you giving them? You're giving them a voice, right? Because there's someone to listen now. Before, there was nobody to listen. Now, if there's someone to listen, you're giving them a voice. Even if they write it down, that's still a voice. And it goes with the arts in general. And the work that I do is bringing these kinds of techniques with listening to their stories and creating an art with a creation with them so they can be proud of it is something that I really enjoy. Because at the end of the residency, it's a culminating event. So what we have is this big 40-minute show. Who are they doing it for? For one, themselves. For two, their parents. 3, their friends. 3rd, the community. Community that has shunned them away because of their choices in life. Now this is their second chance to voice their opinions, right? Or voice what they're doing, what their personal stories are. Now this is their time to say, hey, you know what? I've been here for this long, yada, yada, yada. Listen to me. Listen to what I'm saying right now. And to invite these people to hear that, that's a ripple effect in itself, a domino effect in itself. So then you can go home and say, look what my child did, and this and that. So when he gets out, when she gets out, there's going to be change. The change has already been created by you going there to listen in the first place. So if there's nobody there to listen, there is no voice, there's no change, there's no transformation. So like I believe in what you guys are saying with the team and the community and the village, this all goes together. So if you can just sit down and listen to somebody, you can actually build some empathy, some relationships, and some understanding instead of to judge them based on what their appearance is, which is the trouble with America now today. So that is what my thing is. I don't know if I answered your question, but that is what we are doing and what we believe in and what our passion is, what our heart is at. So it doesn't change overnight. Like you've seen our stories, heard our stories. So this is, yep.
Yeah, one quick just a footnote on that. That was a key lesson for me also, in terms of asking different what can we do for you? What can we do? You know, and invariably from indigenous Mexican communities, from different communities, it's tell our story. And I just realized as Sotero was speaking that in many respects, I'm telling a collective story of how we treat the mentally ill. It's not the individual stories, but it's actually telling a story that people don't know. And it's in that where the transformation can happen, so that you all have it now, and what are we going to do? So it's telling the story, keep telling the story. It's what, anyway, we all do.
Stories.
Thank you all.